have made your side template and your base like this. And to turn this in, if you haven't turned it in already, this is what I want you to do. Make sure your name is on both pieces. Paper clip it to this paper with the instructions on it, and then turn it into the turn-in. When I've checked it, I'll know you're all. I'm going to check them today. So when I've checked all of them, you know, most of you will be ready to get your clay tomorrow, and you'll be all good to go. But I'm going to want to make sure that your template's going to work before I give you the clay. And you will then extrude some pieces. You only need about this many to start with. If you run out of clay, you can always extrude more. And I'm going to show you how. I'm going to recommend that we all roll out our bases, because sometimes when you coil the base, unless you've compressed it really well and blended super well, a crack will appear. So I have a feeling that this will be a more successful way to go. So let's just all do it this way. So I've got a block of clay here. I'm using clay thickness strips on top of a masonite board so it doesn't stick to the table. Because you know, if you roll this on the table, it's just going to stick. And then I'm going to roll out my clay with a rolling pin. When you do this, keep turning the clay so that you're rolling in all directions. This is good because it helps to compress the clay at the same time, and less chance of it cracking. It's very common for the base to crack. The clay thickness strips help you to make sure that your slab is exactly the right thickness. I used 1/2 inch clay thickness strips. And you can't accidentally roll it too thin this way. Of course, if you do this, tell me what's wrong with this picture. I'm going to put my clay thickness strips out here, and now I'm going to roll. Is that going to help me? No, they have to be under your rolling pin. Okay? They can't even be out here, because that's not under the rolling pin. They have to be here. Okay, when it doesn't roll out anymore, take your base template, which should be at least 4 inches, and you can either use your needle tool or a fettling knife. I just happen to have a fettling knife here. Cut that out. Remember, this red terracotta clay can stain your clothes, so you might want to wear an apron. Okay, so I've got my base all made, and that's why you have on your template, you need to have this 1/2 inch straight part at the bottom to show that that's where your base is going to be. You're building on top of your base. This scrap clay right here, never throw it in the garbage can, because remember, any clay you wedge, that's your clay that you can do whatever you want with. It's just extra clay for you to do something fun or play with or whatever. So I've got a bucket started there for scrap clay that people can wedge when they have a chance. Sometimes I like to work on top of a banding wheel because I can turn as I build my pot. Banding wheels are in the cabinet over there under the counter. Here's what I wanted to warn you about. If you pick up a banding wheel like this, that's going to go clanging onto the floor because they're not connected. So try to remember to pick up the banding wheel from the base. Okay. Then I'm going to put, the reason I'm going to put the board on top of the banding wheel is now 2 reasons. I don't want my pot to get stuck to the banding wheel, and I also want to make sure that as I put my template on there, I'm not accidentally putting it at a weird angle. It needs to be flat. Okay, any questions so far? I'm going to unwrap one coil. Sometimes what some people like to do on their very first coil to make sure it's on there well, and wrap these up so they don't dry out, is they like to score and slip the first one. If your clay is really soft, it's not necessary because you'll be able to blend it. But let's just say our clay isn't exactly soft. I had a fork here.
It's in your...
Oh, there it is. Thank you. Okay, so I like to use the fork for scoring because it just scores a lot faster. You would do this if your coils felt like they were a little bit too stiff or your base was too stiff. You could smear some slip on there with your toothbrush. And then you could put the coil on. I'm just doing this as to be extra cautious to make sure this gets attached to my base firmly. I want to now hold up this and make sure that the coil is placed just slightly over the base, so it's going to conform to the form on my template. Then I slice through both coils at an angle, and then I push those two pieces together so they fit perfectly. And once again, before I build up on this, I want to go around and make sure that it's fitting, conforming to my base. Put that kind of in the middle. Now I'm going to put my next one on. Guessing that's going to go a little bit on the outside. Let's see if I have this placed correctly. So turn it and make sure that it touches, just touches the template. Like so. This one's a little bit sticking up too far. Then cut through both coils at an angle. You can use your needle tool or your fettling for that and push them together. Okay. Look over it to make sure it looks round and even. And then this is where I blend, sometimes I blend every single coil, sometimes I blend every 2 coils. Cup your hand on the outside of your pot like this. Never pinch blend. Like, I know I've seen people do this on YouTube videos, and I don't recommend it. If you try to do it with where you're putting pressure on both sides, you're going to make some areas too thin. So I'm just dragging the clay down as I place the palm of my hand on the outside of my pot. See how that's looking? Just dragging. You can use your thumb if that works better. Whatever finger's more comfortable. And then I just kind of blend it sideways just to smooth out the rough part. You want the walls to be very even. Okay. It's a good idea to go back and make sure this didn't get distorted, that it's still fitting the template. And I'm going to leave the outside unblended because I want the coil pattern to show. But if you don't want the coil pattern to show, maybe you've decided, oh, I'm going to do a pot where I'm going to add my texture with some stamps or some paddles or something, then you can now blend the outside by cupping your hand on the inside and dragging down on the outside. So I blend about every 2. So now I'm ready for my next coil.
Are you going to show us how to do a swirl?
I will. I just want to get a little bit higher. I don't recommend doing swirls or decorations at the bottom because it tends to distort your pot too early, and then your whole pot is difficult to build. It's better to save the decoration for a little bit higher up. I'll do it on the next row, okay? So again, I'm going to go around. I pinch that part there. Placing the coil so that it kind of conforms to my template. That looks good. Cut it there. Put it together. A little bit. Then I'm going to do one more coil. My next coil, let's say I wanted to do one little swirl. If you were going to do a number of swirls, you would want, like if I wanted to have some spirals going all the way around, what I would want to do is cut my coil into like 2 or 3 inch pieces that are all the same size, and then make a whole bunch of them, and then put them in place. I'm just going to do one because I think that would look good. So I'm just curling this around to make a spiral. And you see on the spiral, this part's the flattest part right here. That's the part I want to put down. I'm going to put that right there. Just make sure it's firmly in place. Now when I place my next coil, I'm going to place it right next to that, kind of push it on there. and go around like this. I want to use my template to make sure I'm getting it placed correctly. So I go around. And then I'm just going to cut exactly next to that spiral. Push that in place, like so. And then I'm going to go ahead and blend, because I like to blend every 2 coils. I know some people do it every 3, but I just find it works out better for me. You're blending, and this is going to make everything stay connected. You have to blend the inside of your pot. It would never be waterproof or watertight if you didn't do that, and the coils would come apart later as they were drying. So now I'm going to go around, and this is how you embed. I saw some very nice drawings. I can't remember who came up with this idea of having little spirals kind of, yeah, I like that idea. So here you could place one here. You just decide where they're going to go, and then these would fit in between. And then you keep building up like this. Now you don't want to build a pot all in one day, and I'll show you why. I'm going to set this one aside for now, just because I want to show you what I started in my other class. So on this coiled pot, I used the same template, but I decided to do the spiral all the way around, and it was pretty tricky because I had to push it out in order to make it conform to this template, and it made it kind of difficult. That's why I was recommending that maybe you want to do it a little bit higher up. Here, the pot's already starting to get a little bit wobbly, and I noticed as I was building up that it was harder to make it maintain its form. That's why whenever I'm making a coil pot, I don't like to build it all in the same day. I like to get it a little bit stiff and then build up more the next day, and then let it stiffen up and build up more the next day. So that's a good reason to, you wouldn't have time to build it one day anyway. So what I'm going to do now is wrap it, and how you wrap it is really important because I want the base of my pot to get sort of slightly leather hard, while my top coil stays really soft so that I can blend the next coil the next day. Does that make sense? So I'm going to take a small piece of plastic. So take a piece of plastic and cut it with scissors, cut out like a square, put that part inside and make it kind of stick to the inside of the pot, like that. And then make the top coil be completely sealed by the plastic, just like this. And leave the rest of it sort of uncovered, like that, in your locker. The very next day when you take it out, the bottom part that got a little bit of air should be firmer, and the top part should still be soft. And I also do not recommend that you store your pot on a piece of masonite. Can somebody tell me why that's not a good idea?
It might stick.
It actually won't stick to the masonite, so there's another reason that you don't want to put it on the masonite board and then in your locker. Same way, remember when you were doing the pouch pots, how I said don't put that on a masonite board and put it in your locker wrapped up? Something's going to happen you don't want to have happen. What happens when clay is on masonite? Masonite is very porous, isn't it? That's why clay doesn't stick to it. Porous means that it has a lot of, it absorbs moisture.
Oh, so then it'll dry out.
Exactly. It'll dry out too fast because the masonite will suck all the moisture out of it. Tyler? What's that? What about it? I can't hear you.
It'd be a great bowl.
Oh, yeah, I could. but it's going to be a better pot because look how tall it's going to be up here. Yeah, so see, it doesn't really take that long, but I don't want anybody to make a bowl. We're making pots. You can make a bowl for your second one, okay? Make some little bowls. So that's how you wrap it up. Put it right in your locker, or at least set it on a piece of plastic, you know, so that it doesn't get absorbed, you know, into the masonite, and then put it on the masonite. And that's how you store it for the next day. If you're going to be gone for 2 days, I would maybe wrap it up just a little bit better, because you don't want it drying out completely, or you will end up having to start completely over. Now, what clay are you going to use if you start completely over? Let's say you really messed up.
Oh, I know. Yes. The clay that you wedged.
The clay that you wedged, right. So you're welcome to start over. Messing up doesn't make me feel bad because I know you're going to wedge your own clay. It's all good. I'm going to stop that right there. And you just keep going. But this is as high as I probably want to go in one day. Anyways, any questions about that? That's it. So you can turn that thing off, please.